Kamikaze pilots were Japanese aviators in World War II who carried out suicide missions, deliberately crashing into enemy ships. Their attacks caused destruction, but also reflected Japan's desperation in the final stages of the war.
The year is 1944. A small, frail plane hurtles through the sky toward a U.S. destroyer. It's not carrying bombs. It is the bomb. The pilot, likely barely old enough to shave, is on a one-way mission. In the West, they were viewed as fanatic zealots, monsters of self-destruction. But behind the name Kamikaze, Divine Wind, was a story far more complex, desperate, and tragic than simple suicide. Imagine being ordered to fly a plane that you know has no return ticket. Imagine being 19 years old, writing a final letter to your parents, and strapping on a headband for a one-way trip into history. In this video, we're not just looking at the final fiery crashes, we're peeling back the layers on why Japan felt this program was necessary, who these young men really were, and the devastating choice they were forced to make in the final desperate days of World War II.
Through meticulous research into wartime diaries, military records, and survivor accounts, we understand that this was not a spontaneous act of national mania. The Kamikaze program was a calculated, last-ditch military strategy born from a strategic nightmare. We will trace the path from the initial idea of special attack units to the devastating reality of the Battle of Okinawa. The decision was simple: trade one young life for one warship. It was a tragic equation that became the defining, desperate image of Japan at the end of the war. By 1944, Japan was losing the Pacific War decisively. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by the Allies, Japan lost 3 carriers and hundreds of aircraft. Their most experienced pilots were dead, and their replacement pilots were dangerously undertrained.
Admiral Takejiro Onishi was faced with a strategic nightmare: how to inflict crippling damage with minimal resources. Conventional bombing was failing. American anti-aircraft fire was too accurate. Only a direct hit could stop a ship. The solution? Remove the pilot's concern for returning home. The one-way flight guaranteed the pilot would hit the target.
The first official Kamikaze unit, the Shikushima unit, launched its attack during the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944. The strategy was brutally effective. They successfully sank the escort carrier USS St. Lo and inflicted heavy damage on several others. The High Command saw the proof. A single desperate life could sink a ship. Who were these men? They were rarely the hardened veterans you might expect. Most were university students, young men aged 18 to 24, plucked from colleges. They were educated, literate, and aware of Japan's dire position. Propaganda told them they were dying for the emperor and receiving eternal glory.
But the reality was complex. While patriotism was real, the pressure was immense. Signing up was framed as a noble act, making refusal almost impossible due to social stigma and military hierarchy. Their final ritual was to drink a cup of sake, write a final poem, and say goodbye to their comrades.
They flew converted Zero fighters, but the program created specialized horrors too. The Ohka, or Baka bomb, Japanese for stupid bomb, was a rocket-powered flying missile. It was launched from a mother plane and had no landing gear. It was quite literally a human-guided weapon. The mission was entirely irreversible.
The Kamikaze program reached its devastating climax during the Battle of Okinawa in the spring of 1945. Over 3 months, the Japanese launched mass attacks called kikusui, or floating chrysanthemums, throwing hundreds of planes at the American fleet.
The psychological toll on the American sailors was immense. Every plane was a potential nuclear strike. Ultimately, the Kamikazes sank over 30 U.S. ships and damaged hundreds more, inflicting the highest casualty rate the U.S. Navy suffered in the entire Pacific War.
But the program was a strategic failure. Nearly 4,000 pilots died, an expenditure of life that Japan could never replace. While damaging, the attacks couldn't stop the overwhelming American production capacity. For every ship damaged, 10 more were waiting. The Kamikaze program prolonged the war, but it could not change the outcome. It only guaranteed total sacrifice. The story of the Kamikaze pilots is a somber reminder of how far a nation will go when its back is against the wall, and the enormous burden placed upon its young. They were victims of circumstances, forced into a role that defines tragedy in wartime.
What do you think was the biggest tragedy of the Kamikaze program? The strategic failure or the human cost? Share your respectful thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. If you want to keep exploring the deep human stories hidden within World War II history and beyond, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into a forgotten conflict. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.